Bonjour à tous et bienvenue dans cette nouvelle édition de Rencontre. Aujourd'hui, notre invité est Jacques Austin, un célèbre homme politique canadien qui, dans les années 70, a été un témoin privilégié de l'instauration des relations diplomatiques sino-canadiennes. Avant de commencer notre discussion, regardons ensemble ce reportage.
Né en 1932 à Calgary, Jack Austin est un ancien homme politique et membre du Sénat canadien. Après des études à l'Université de Colombie-Britannique et à Harvard, il entame une carrière d'avocat, puis travaille dans la fonction publique. En 1970, il devient ministre de l'Énergie, des Mines et des Ressources et participe en tant que superviseur aux négociations qui vont mener à l'établissement des relations diplomatiques entre le Canada et la République populaire de Chine le 13 octobre 1970. En août 1975, il est nommé à la Chambre haute par le principal artisan du rapprochement avec la Chine, le Premier ministre Pierre Trudeau, et représente la province de la Colombie-Britannique. Il sert à titre de ministre d'État dans le cabinet de Pierre Trudeau de 1981 à 1982, puis est ministre d'État pour le développement social jusqu'à la retraite de Trudeau en 1984. En 2003, il est nommé leader du gouvernement au Sénat jusqu'en 2006. Jack Austin prend sa retraite politique en 2007. Il est aujourd'hui coprésident de la Commission des affaires sino-canadiennes.
Bonjour, Monsieur Austin, bienvenue dans notre émission.
Merci, merci.
Dans les années 70, vous avez été le sous-ministre de l'Énergie,
Oui.
des Mines et des Ressources. Donc, en 1973, le Premier ministre Pierre Trudeau a entamé sa première visite en Chine. On dit que c'était une visite historique parce que c'était la première fois qu'un Premier ministre canadien se rendait officiellement en Chine. Donc, avez-vous gardé quelques souvenirs marquants lors de cette visite ou quelle est votre première visite en Chine?
Merci. I want to start by telling you that Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau came to China as a student traveler in 1946 and 1949. In 1949, he was in Wuhan when the PLA occupied Wuhan. And the general told him, "It's time you left." So he's, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau has had a lifetime of interest in China. I will also say that we exchanged diplomatic relations between China and Canada on October 13, 1970. And for 2 years before that, there were negotiations between Canada and China on the terms of the agreement. And I participated as a supervisor, not the direct negotiator, but the supervisor, one of several supervisors, right? And so part of that agreement of exchange of diplomatic relations provided for new agreements, sub-agreements, to exchange technical information in different subjects. And as you've said, my field was energy and petroleum. So I entered into agreements in June 1971 with the Ministry of Petroleum and the Ministry of Mining. A group of officials traveled to China in June of 1971, and we were hosted by Zhou Enlai. And so I spent 3 days as a member of meetings with Zhou Enlai in a discussion of world affairs and many other topics of a global kind. And one of my most important impressions was how well informed he was about the world. China was not so open in 1971, but clearly the leadership was very well informed, and he could discuss any issue. Also, his French was very good. As a personal story, on the last night, we had a banquet. It took place in the great hall of the Beijing Hotel, and Zhou Enlai was the host. It was the first time that I had experienced the Chinese custom of the host going from table to table, toasting in Kweijo Ma Tai. Right? So I had, during the dinner, had 3 small amounts of Kweijo Ma Tai, and my head was doing this. And then I see that Zhou Enlai has an assistant with a bottle of Kweijo Ma Tai, and he's toasting. So I said to the official who was there to assist me, next to me, from the foreign ministry, I said, what's he drinking? It can't be Mao Tai. Nobody could drink that much. He said, don't say anything, but it's water. So it was a great event. I was very impressed. Of course, 1971 is several centuries ago in China's history of today. The progress has been so rapid. So the other impressions were, of course, many thousands of people on bicycles, all dressed the same, right? And coming and going, and seeing that a stranger like me was rather fascinating. So we walk on the street, they would gather around to say, why are you here? I mean, we don't see people from the West. But all that is, only I can remember that now.
40 ans plus tard, vous venez en Chine encore une fois. Donc, quel changement voyez-vous en Chine qui se passe maintenant? Oui.
Maintenant? It's a different world. It's a different planet. China is a modern society, particularly the eastern provinces are a modern society. Look at the construction, the buildings, the transportation, and the leadership today is using all the modern management philosophies and techniques. I don't think the people of 1971 would recognize the people of 2016 at all.
Comment jugez-vous la relation entre la Chine et le Canada d'aujourd'hui?
Well, maintenant, it's very, very positive. The new Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, has met with President Xi Jinping in bilateral meetings twice since October. And they've discussed the development of the bilateral relationship. Canada elected a government in 2006 under what is called the Conservative Party, and that government, headed by Prime Minister Stephen Harper, was relatively unfriendly to China for a number of ideological reasons. So we had a phrase for that period called cold politics, warm business. So business continued, but the government was appealing to a group, that government was appealing to a group in Canadian society who were basically questioning China's human rights agenda, didn't understand China's history, had no idea of the progress that China had made in human rights from some very difficult times historically, and would not learn anything, would not be willing to learn anything. But that government is gone, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is an internationalist. Like his father, he has a very strong view of bilateral relations between Canada and China, and wants to build that relationship back to where it was. And I will say that where it was in September 2005, President Hu Jintao made an official visit to Ottawa, and during the bilateral discussions said that Canada had been and was a great friend of China, and he proposed that we negotiate a strategic partnership. And unfortunately, before we could do anything, a new government was elected, and they were not interested. Now we are again interested. The new government is very interested.
Bonjour, Monsieur Austin, bienvenue dans notre émission.
Merci. We exchanged diplomatic relations between China and Canada on October 13, 1970. China was not so open in 1971, but clearly the leadership was very well informed and he could discuss any issue. Also, his French was very good. China is now a major global player.
L'arrivée au pouvoir de Justin Trudeau, le jeune Premier ministre canadien, va peut-être instaurer un nouveau départ dans les relations entre le Canada et la Chine. C'est son père, Pierre Trudeau, qui en 1970 avait pris la décision historique d'établir des relations diplomatiques avec la République populaire de Chine. Son fils Justin a également promis une nouvelle approche avec la Chine, différente de la politique du précédent gouvernement conservateur, qui avait entretenu des relations parfois tendues avec Beijing. En 2005, lors de sa visite au Canada, le président Hu Jintao avait émis le souhait de construire un partenariat stratégique, une proposition qui était restée lettre morte. De nombreux commentateurs politiques voient dans l'arrivée d'un nouveau gouvernement et d'un nouveau Premier ministre à Ottawa l'opportunité de rediriger les relations sino-canadiennes. Une relation qui pourrait jouer sur la complémentarité des économies chinoises et canadiennes et permettre au Canada de jouer un rôle plus actif dans la région Asie-Pacifique. Lors d'une entrevue avec le président Xi Jinping lors du sommet du G20 2015, le jeune Premier ministre a évoqué un possible accord de libre-échange avec la Chine. Un Justin Trudeau qui semble vouloir reprendre le flambeau de son père et créer une nouvelle relation bilatérale avec la Chine.
Pour le Canada et pour la Chine, les changements climatiques aussi sont très très importants. L'environnement, c'est très important. Donc, j'espère que nous aurons les occasions de faire beaucoup de choses ensemble en ce qui concerne l'environnement.
Vous avez mentionné du nouveau gouvernement canadien, c'est-à-dire après la prise de fonction de Justin Trudeau. La communauté internationale espère une gouvernance canadienne plus ouverte et plus ambitieuse. Donc, est-ce qu'on peut dire qu'il s'agit d'un retour du Canada sur une ligne multilatéraliste?
Absolutely. That is the direction. Much more internationalist, and I believe, while it's not yet government policy, because it's a new government and they're examining all the issues, but I believe that within a year we will begin the negotiation of a bilateral trade agreement with China. China has said they are open to such a discussion. And I think that the Justin Trudeau government will begin the process sometime late this year. Now, Mr. Trudeau is going to come to the G20, of course, and negotiations are underway between Canada and China for a significant bilateral meeting either before or after the G20, and some of these very important issues are on that agenda.
Selon certains médias, le gouvernement canadien et le secteur des affaires du Canada travaillent maintenant ensemble pour l'obtention d'un accord de libre-échange sino-canadien. Mais on entend peu de choses sur ce projet. Est-ce que pourriez-vous nous révéler quelques détails de ce projet, cette zone de libre-échange?
Well, I can tell you that Canada and China will need to do what is known in international business as a comparability agreement. So each side will work to see where the issues and business opportunities, economic development issues are, and then they will come to an agreement on the areas of trade, the areas of tariffs, the areas of rules, and then they will proceed. I think it will be very much like the current China-Australia free trade agreement. I think that will be, there'll be some changes, but it will look like that, in my opinion.
Et vous, vous avez joué un rôle très important dans l'émergence du Canada en tant que puissance énergétique mondiale. Vous pensez que ce secteur de l'énergie est un domaine qui présente des opportunités importantes entre la Chine et le Canada?
Canada is a very big oil and natural gas reserve, and China has made some important investments. Such as CNOOC, as we call it, China National Overseas Oil Corporation, purchased a major Canadian company for $15 billion US. So Canada's welcomed China's investment in this area. Our situation is something like China's. China has vast resources in Xinjiang, in the Tarim Basin. So the resources are a long way from the market. Our resources are also east of our Rocky Mountains in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and so reaching the coast for export requires pipelines to be built, major capital investments. The problem in the future, this will be a major source of relationship. But the problem we have today is the price of oil and natural gas would not give a return on the investment of the infrastructure. In the meantime, we have a bilateral trade of about $85 billion two-way, favoring China at the moment. But Canada is increasing its exports, particularly in agriculture, wheat, fruit, seafoods, and other grains. And China has told us they'll take everything we produce.
Bonjour, Monsieur Austin, bienvenue dans notre émission.
Merci, merci. We exchanged diplomatic relations between China and Canada on October 13, 1970. China was not so open in 1971, but clearly the leadership was very well informed and he could discuss any issue. Also, his French was very good. China is now a major global player.
Les 4 et 5 septembre 2016, la Chine sera le pays hôte de la réunion du G20 à Hangzhou, dans l'est du pays. Un G20 qui se focalisera sur 4 points. Les innovations susceptibles d'avoir une incidence sur les modes de croissance, l'amélioration de la gouvernance économique et financière mondiale, la stimulation du commerce international et de l'investissement, et enfin la promotion d'un développement inclusif et interconnecté. Afin de préparer au mieux cet événement important où va se jouer l'avenir de la gouvernance mondiale, la Chine a prévu d'organiser plusieurs réunions de Sherpas au cours des mois précédant le sommet, notamment à Guangzhou, à Xiamen, mais aussi à Hangzhou où s'est tenu le forum Vision 20, une réunion où de nombreux experts économiques et des personnalités politiques venues du monde entier se sont réunis pour réfléchir à l'avenir des institutions mondiales. Une plateforme de propositions qui a également permis de discuter des mesures à mettre en œuvre afin que le G20 consolide son statut d'instance principale de la gouvernance économique globale.
Le G20, en fait, les pays du G20 sont les pays très importants, surtout dans le système économique. Et donc, si on peut améliorer et rendre le G20 plus fort, ça c'est tant mieux pour le monde et pour le système économique.
Et le sommet du G20 2016 va se tenir à Hangzhou en Chine. Quelles sont vos attentes sur ce sommet?
I think this gathering here today is of exceptional quality. The people who have been invited and are making their presentations are the world's experts in international economics and in what needs to be done to further the structure of global cooperation. China, President Xi Jinping has made it clear that China wants to move further into the establishment of international processes, consultation, and cooperation. And so China hosting in September the G20 can make an enormous difference to the way in which these global issues are managed. There are always forces in every country that do not want international cooperation. They want only national policies. And what we've experienced in the world is if everybody follows their national policy, then the world doesn't operate effectively. It creates problems. So the cooperation solves problems. So it's clear that China has chosen the right issue for discussion and that China's leadership will be very important in moving global communication, global cooperation forward in the next few years.
Mais selon certains experts, à partir de 2011, l'influence du G20 est déjà déclinante. Il n'est plus en mesure d'empêcher la répétition des crises économiques. Donc, est-ce que vous pensez que le G20 est déjà en crise?
There's no doubt that the G20 was most effective when it was set up, and the world had an 2007-2008 financial crisis, and the cooperation demonstrated how valuable it was. All of those countries acting together in the same direction prevented a major global depression. Since that time, the G20 hasn't faced that level of challenge, and so there's been a decline in interest while people ran to other important priorities. I think that we are at a moment in Hangzhou in September when either we move forward in a more cooperative and coordinated way, or the G20 is shown not to be the right instrument for global cooperation. But I'm very optimistic that China's leadership and the support of many countries for coordination and continuing dialogue and analysis will give us the right direction. I would add just one thing. The developed countries have had an organization for 30 years called the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, based in Paris. And that has allowed the developed countries to dialogue with one another and coordinate their policies. And it's a major research institution, so that it produces neutral facts, right? And therefore nobody can quarrel about the facts. The direction, okay, but the facts are there and they are facts, right? This is lacking in Asia, an organization that exists to put objective facts on the table so that the dialogue can be based on the same background understanding, right? If the G20 succeeds, then we will have that type of organization as a combination between the developed and the developing community. If not, then the developed countries have to understand that Asia will go its own way with its own OECD. So that's one of the reasons I know that the developed countries don't want to see that happen, and therefore I believe there will be a good chance of success.
Puisque cette année, le sommet du G20 se tient en Chine, parce que la Chine, c'est un pays émergent, pensez-vous que c'est un bon départ pour que les pays en voie de développement ou bien les pays émergents s'impliquent de plus en plus à la gouvernance mondiale?
Asia has 60% of the world's population and 40% of the world's GDP. And the old idea of developing countries, in my mind, is no longer valid because many countries now, and China as much as any of them, have huge intellectual capacity, huge understanding. A developing country with no infrastructure is one thing. A developing country with infrastructure and with intellectual infrastructure is competitive with the developed world. So these old labels are not so useful anymore.
Au sein du G20, quel rôle doit jouer la Chine pour améliorer la gouvernance mondiale?
The role is to be a major player and an influence for the development of the global community in a coherent and cooperative and peaceful way. China is now a major global player, and the United States remains a major global player. So the other countries of the world don't like it to be said that unless those two countries agree, the future of the international system will be difficult. But that's what I was saying earlier today in my presentation, that they have, in their own dialogue, their own bilateral, they have to understand their mutual interests and proceed together. And frankly, again, I'm optimistic because each country and all the countries of the world need a stable and secure global system. Commerce and the growth of our societies and countries will be set back if there is not peace and stability in the global system. So that is the major interest of China, the major interest of the United States, the major interest of all the countries, Canada as well. So again, all my reasons for optimism.
Merci, Monsieur Austin, d'avoir accepté notre invitation. Merci de vos éclairages. Et je vous souhaite un très bon séjour en Chine.
Merci,
Merci beaucoup.
Merci.